Good afternoon, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, here in a very empty, very quiet, eerily quiet, if you will, Mackey Arena. It's just me and the air conditioning sound coming out of the ceiling. This is, I guess, your first goldenblack.com wrap video of the Purdue basketball 2023-2024 season. It is brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Club Hotel. We appreciate their support as always. Next time you're on campus, need a place to stay, I would highly recommend the Purdue Union Club Hotel. If I needed somewhere to stay tonight, that's where I'd be. But I have a house in West Lafayette, so I don't need somewhere to stay. But I would highly recommend that's what you guys do. So Purdue runs these three scrimmages today, these three 10-minute scrimmages. I would say this was the public's first look at this Purdue team, but this has been a very uncommon offseason in the sense that Purdue had one of these open scrimmages before Europe. Many of you logged on to the old Flow Hoops this summer and watched the 4 games in Europe. You've seen a lot of this team. Some of you probably woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to watch Ross-Ade and Team Canada play. So ordinarily this thing would be your first public look at Purdue's basketball team. Not really the case this year. Nevertheless, here we are. So 30 minutes of basketball, essentially. I'm here to talk about it for the next 5, 10, 100 minutes, whatever it might be. A couple of quick takes. I'm going to write more about this later. I'm a better writer than I'm a speaker, so I encourage you all to go to goldenblack.com tonight and read my stuff in addition to listening to my blathering on video. Ethan Morton. Different dude, completely different dude, for the better. I think, one of the things Ethan Morton has always kind of, I don't want to say battled with, but he's needed to be comfortable, he's needed to be confident, and I think today, playing as more of a true guard, which I think, Purdue is now free to use him as, because they have some other wings that can log minutes there and other guards that can move around. I think that he looked free today. He looked comfortable. He looked confident. He looked assertive. He looked aggressive. He didn't always look that way last year. I had an interesting interview with him afterwards. He's always been a guy who thinks a lot. And for a lot of guys, it's a very positive thing. For some guys, there's such thing as, paralysis by analysis, as they call it. And, I think being in maybe more of a role where he's not standing around on the wing waiting for things to come to him and he's thinking all the time, I think might unlock something in him. And I think you saw the numbers might not necessarily bear it. He's 3 of 5 from the floor. He has 4 rebounds, 8 assists. That's good. 8 points, but if you just 4 steals. But if you saw this, if you were actually here and watched this, you saw a different player. You saw a very, very different player than you saw toward the end of last season. A much better player, a player playing a much different role, and somebody who, I think was easy to kind of forget about this summer because he missed so much practice time, and there were some new and shiny toys coming in Camden Heide, Miles Colvin, Lance Jones, etc. But I think today, if not the last couple weeks of practice, because my understanding is he was really good in their scrimmages last week too, but today served notice that do not forget about Ethan Morton. Would not surprise me based off what I saw today if he's not, Purdue starting 3 at Arkansas this weekend. Sorry, I'm falling asleep. I do think Lance Jones is probably going to be that 3rd backcourt starter as of now. Obviously it doesn't matter all that much when it's an exhibition game / scrimmage, but I think Ethan Morton still has a lock on a really prominent role for this basketball team. And for as much as we've made of his shooting, rightfully so, because he's that backside guy who people are going to leave sometimes, I think today showed you a lot of different ways in which he can impact basketball games without even taking threes. This was the old, I don't want to make this comparison because they're very different players, very different physical specimens, but this was kind of what sidetrack Nojel Eastern's career at Purdue, is he just got away from what made him effective because he wanted to score. And I'm not saying Ethan Morton has lived to score, but I think last year, there was some pressure on him to do so. And it probably was something that, was a bit of a distraction from the ways he could, impact games otherwise. But so I think you might see a really, really emboldened and liberated, for lack of a better term, Ethan Morton this season. You sure as hell did today, and that this was a really impressive day for him. Insofar as a scrimmage against your teammates can be anything telling. A couple other things that jumped out. Trey Kaufman-Renn takes more shots than anybody on the team. I think that's an indication of what sort of offensive prominence Purdue is hoping he carries for this team this year. The lineups with him and Edie together, no one around the program has voiced any sort of concern about that working. The players themselves have acknowledged, hey, spacing might be a little bit of a complication. There might be some defensive, complications there. There will be. There absolutely will be. But I think that's something Purdue really wants to crowbar into a situation where they're playing that way for, I don't know, maybe a third of a game. Painter said at the start of practice that they're practicing that way about a third of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and take that and I'm going to apply it to projections for the season and figure that, Purdue's not going 25 minutes a game that way, 30 minutes a game that way maybe. Don't forget about Mason Gillis. He's still a key player for this team. But I do think Purdue wants more scoring options on the floor, and I think that Trey Kaufman-Renn's a big piece of what they're going to try to get done there. So for him to come out and be productive today, he wasn't as efficient as you'd probably like to be 6 of 16 for a guy who takes a lot of high percentage shots. He was very aggressive looking for his three-point shot. He did that pretty well in Europe on low volume. He was 1 of 4 today. That's one more make away from being 50%. 1 of 4 looks bad on paper, but I don't know how many he's going to take this year, but I think he has to take enough to be somebody that they have to respect. They have to guard away from the basket. Certainly enough to be able to stretch the floor and make sure his guy, when he's the entry guy, isn't just sitting in Zach Edey's lap, and vice versa. I think that you're going to see Edey feeding the post more than you ever would have imagined in your wildest dreams this season. You saw it a little bit today in a little cross-lane post entry from Edey out of a double team to Kaufman-Renn planting his guy at the rim and getting an easy bucket out of it. But there's a world here where Zach Edey's assist numbers double if Purdue makes threes, if Purdue gets this kind of high-low action going with Edey and Kaufman-Renn. But today was a reminder that Kaufman-Renn's going to be a big piece of what they do offensively this season. Obviously, I thought Fletcher Loyer was really, really good. 5 of 7 from the floor overall. I'm not getting into the whole. Here's what this team did against this team. Here's what this team did against this team. Requires way too much explanation. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that this team who had this player at this time beat this team who had this player at this time. So don't ask me that stuff. I have a very feeble mind, and I can't keep it all straight anyway, and it doesn't really matter. But regardless of who he was playing against, Fletcher Loyer was really good. And I think people, looking at the way maybe he shot the ball toward the end of the regular season, clearly he was worn down physically. Clearly he was hurt. I think people looking broadly at his shooting numbers last season are forgetting how hard it is to average 12 points a game as a true freshman in the Big Ten, to be the second leading scorer on one of the best teams in college basketball. I think people are sleeping on him, to be honest with you. And I haven't really understood the negativity that I've perceived, nor do I put much stock in it. I'm just saying this guy was a really good player as a freshman. No, he did not transform his body this summer, nor did he need to. Nor does he have the frame to probably become a 200-pound guy ever. Doesn't need to. There are plenty of 180-pound great scoring guards in college basketball. There's going to be some defensive limitations. There always will be, typically, when you have that category of player on the floor at all times. Sasha Stefanovic was that way. Dakota Mathias, his freshman year, was that way. Ryan Klein was generally that way. Kendall Stevens was certainly that way. But don't look at the limitations. Look at the positives. And Fletcher Loyer is going to be a really, really good offensive player for this basketball team. Purdue is used to working around some limitations on the floor defensively. And I don't want to talk about Fletcher Loyer like he just can't even be out there defensively. He's fine. He's just not the quickest guy in the world. It doesn't really matter all that much. Purdue has won a ton of games with a guy on the floor like that at all times. And I'm talking about this so much it makes it sound like Fletcher Loyer has like no legs or something, and he can't guard anyone. It's not going to be that way. He's going to be fine, people. Purdue's going to win a lot of games with him this year, the same way it won a lot of games with him last year. He's going to shoot a higher percentage this year than he did last year on the same volume. He's still going to be that guy who makes you a better offensive basketball team simply by being out there, knowing what's going on, making good passes, making good decisions, being a multi-level scorer, somebody who's going to make a lot of threes, who's going to make a lot of mid-range shots, who's going to make a lot of plays for other people, and is going to sucker punch people a couple times a week by getting to all the way to the basket on people and making crafty little finishes. Really good offensive basketball player. Please do not forget about that. Don't look at like one game in Europe and say, oh, he's going to shoot 31% again or 32%, whatever it was. He's really good, everybody. Just keep that in mind. Don't eat your own. Enjoy the process here. But he was really good. Braden Smith, Purdue is demanding he be more aggressive this season as a scorer. He's 4 of 6 from the floor today. Maybe the volume of the shots didn't indicate that, but the eyeball test and looking at how aggressive he was, very much. There's going to be a fine line there he's got to walk. He's got to be aggressive looking for his shot, but also continue to make good decisions. And that's a tough thing for players sometimes. But I think he's going to do pretty well at that. He's going to make a huge jump from one year to the next, be one of the best guards in the Big Ten, and one of the better guards Matt Painter's had at Purdue. The thing about Smith and Loyer is that people are holding them, it feels like to me, like to senior year standards. Last year was the starting point, not the finish line for them. That was just the beginning, and those guys were so good so often as true freshmen. None of Purdue's success last season was going to be possible without them, and I think keep in mind how much better they can be. You saw them at their low points here and there at the end of the year, but you saw them at their high points too, and judge them for their high points, because that's going to be more their normal this season than not, because players get better. They almost always get better, and if they're not getting better, something's really wrong around them or with them. But these two guys are absolutely wired to get better and better and better, and that year 1 to year 2 jump is typically the big one. You remember what Jaden Ivey did. I'm not comparing either of those guys to Jaden Ivey by any stretch of the imagination. Caleb Swanigan, again, totally different animals than these two guys. But I'm just saying, typically that big jump comes between year 1 and year 2 for guys, and I would anticipate that being the case for these two players. I think Lance Jones is really going to balance them out and really help them, being a guy they practice against, play against, whatever it might be. He really kind of rounds out that backcourt because he's so quick, he's so athletic, and he's so defensive-minded and so defensively versatile. He really, where Smith and Loyer might, not be ideally suited from a defensive matchup perspective one day, just put Lance Jones on him. That's going to be Purdue's MO this year, I strongly suspect. Jones is probably, by reputation, better on the ball, but he's going to guard off the ball quite a bit. And I don't see any reason why he can't be really good at that. There's going to be a learning curve there, obviously. He's guarded everybody at SIU, basically, and how much he had to guard away from the ball and and sort of things like that. He's kind of done it all, but at this level of detail. And Brian Mullins is a really good coach, so it's not like he's coming from, playing at the YMCA the last 4 years. But it's going to be a little bit of a different deal up here at this higher level. But I think he's going to really help this team from a defensive perspective, and just be. He might go down. I keep saying this. Might go down as the perfect recruit at the perfect time for a team with a real window here. I keep contextualizing this season this way. Last year was not Purdue's shot. Last year was not their window. Last year was their starting point. They won 29 games. They should have won some NCAA tournament games. They won a Big Ten championship by a mile. They won 2 Big Ten championships. The PK 85 thing was a huge deal. That was the ground floor, because that was Zach Edey's first season as a great player. That was Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer's freshman year. This is their window right now. This is their season. This is the year where everything lines up. So no pressure, Purdue. But that's sort of what I got here from this Purdue Fan Day scrimmage. Getting the season off right here, and went way long on this thing. This was 16 minutes. Unacceptable. We're going to have to absolutely positively get in midseason form here pretty soon and get this down to 8 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it might be. But so that's what I got from Purdue's Fan Day scrimmages here in Mackey Arena. Thank you to the Purdue Union Club Hotel for your support. Next time I talk to you, it will be Saturday evening from the University of Arkansas. I can't remember what their arena is called, but I will be there for Purdue's exhibition game, charity game, however we want to call this, against Arkansas. It'll be my first trip to the state of Arkansas. Take another one off the list. Just need to get the Dakotas at some point, Mississippi at some point, Delaware, even though that's a bordering state from where I'm from. I've never been there. We keep knocking states off that list. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And by all means, please, if you're just watching this on YouTube or whatever, go to goldenblack.com. I am a much better writer than I am a speaker. You will like the stuff I write, hopefully. Again, as I'm saying in my daily videos, if you're degenerate enough to be watching all of this stuff I do, you'll probably be interested in our website. So you can subscribe for $1 for your first month here, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. So thank you, everybody.